welcome you. I can see now we are 20 people and more people are still joining. We thank you all for the support, for the love, for the protection we are giving each other. We appreciate all of you. So without wasting much time, I'm going to lead us in a prayer. I'm going to pray using my own indigenous language, which is Shona. Again, my name is Award Tingwenya from Zimbabwe, Harare. I'm hosting this meeting through the ILoveBlackPeople offices in Harare, in the capital city of Zimbabwe, at Rainbow Towers Hotel, HSC site. We thank you all, we welcome you, and we love you. We appreciate each and every one of you with the assistance and the help which you are giving us. And also I can see that new people who have just joined us today. We'll give you what's lined up for today's meeting. We appreciate all of you. You can invite your friends as well to join, because these meetings are for free, no money is needed. Thank you. So let us pray, and again, I would like to wish a happy Holy Saturday for the Christians. They are enjoying in fact, remembering what Christ did with the plan of salvation. We appreciate that. So today is the day which Christ rested in the tomb, and we appreciate all Christians who are in here, whether you're Muslim, Christian. This is an application. This is a movement which welcomes all people, and we are one family, regardless of what we believe in. So we welcome each and every one of you. Thank you all. Angatina mate, tenzi maribaba totenda nechiko cheupenyu chamunotikazwaniswa. Tauya pamberi pechigaro cheMwari, tichitungamirai neuno musangano uno kubva unofamba zvakanaka. Ndaisa zvese Mwari Baba, zvandataura nezvandasiya, ndosiya mune iyo mbiri yenyu inogara nokusingaperi. Amen. Yes, again, so everyone in this meeting, I would like to remind each and every one of you that this meeting, you will be all muted. This is for us to maintain order. If you would like to ask something, you can write in the chat section. And also, I'd like to welcome our co-founder, Mr. Christopher Mapondera. He's with us on this call, and he's going to give us a word. And I hope you witness that he is very much, and he's a great speaker, as well as a world researcher. In fact, he's an engineer, but through his research and wide reading, and for the love of Black people, they decided to come up with this great idea to protect each and every one of us, wherever we are, wherever you are in the part of this world. So we would like to welcome our co-founder again. So we recently launched an application which we are using at the moment to protect ourselves from racism and xenophobia. What only you need to do is to recommend their businesses near you. It doesn't take a minute to do so. Those who are using the application can witness that, and there are many feedbacks which we got from different people, and also those who would love whom they have in mind. They can even send to us through the chat room so that we can send it to our developers to add those features for our application. If you haven't checked it out yet, we are going to share the link in the chat room so that you can check it. Again, we are also live on Facebook. For those who are watching us from Facebook, you can write as well your name, your surname, where you are watching us, and whether you're a member or an ambassador of ILoveBlackPeople. We welcome you, and we love each and every one of you here. We are Black people with purpose, which is to protect each other from racism and xenophobia. We appreciate all of you. So we're going to discuss a bit about the ILoveBlackPeople application today. Yes, Yvonne with Alex, our lead developer, with us on this meeting.
Yes, I think while we're waiting for him to join the meeting, we can have our speaker of today, our co-founder, Mr. Mapondera.
Yes, Mr. Mapondera, you can have the slot and speak to the Black people all over the world.
Yeah.
Welcome,
okay,
our co-founder.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I want to welcome everybody and say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's always a pleasure to come and chat with you on various aspects of what we're involved with as Black people. Wherever we are, we have the same challenges, we have the same opportunities. So that is really what I want to concentrate on. But before I can go very far, I think we need to understand the essence of this app we're talking about. Just as an example, a few days ago, a brother from DRC got killed by policemen in Michigan. Now, if we had this kind of an app in place, if he had it, probably he would have consulted with other brothers and sisters in Michigan to say, hey, what is this a safe place? Or they've told him, hey, don't go this way, go such and such a place, and so forth, So there are so many practical applications, for this app. Last time I was talking about when African students were leaving Ukraine, they were having a hard time, finding where they could go, or even trying to get out of Ukraine itself. And when they got out of Ukraine, you can imagine, they get to Poland or any of the other surrounding countries, say, okay, what would be a safe place to go to? Whether it is a hotel, a restaurant, or even a doctor's place, and so forth, because some of them went through a lot of trauma and so forth. So these are some of the practical applications, for what we are talking about. We have situations, even now, in South Africa right now, where we still have this xenophobia coming up and so forth from time to time. You'd want to be in a position where one can be able to say, hey, what would be a safe place for me to go? What would be, nearest medical facility one can go to, and so forth. So I'd like to urge each and every one of us to get as many people to join and have this app with them. It's really a survival tool. That's how we really have to look at it. It's not just like any other type of app, that we can have. This is for our survival. And it doesn't matter at times where we are. We're always in danger of something happening to us. So we have to be aware, and having this kind of a tool with us would be very helpful, and we should just treat it as such, that just the way you carry your phone around, something happens to you, you want to call 911 if you're in a country where they've got those emergency telephone, lines to call and so forth. So that is that part of it, I'll come back to it again, but let me just share a few things, for what happened lately. And as I said, as Pan-Africans, we must try to be up to date with what is happening in the Pan-African world. I know, that the news sources, at times they don't tell us the truth of what is going on. Like right now, it seems as if political refugees, economic refugees started off with Ukraine. But we have had these issues in Africa for years. Most of them have been created by our oppressors because they want us to fight each other once they have access to our resources. The richest country in Africa, DRC, you find that there's so much conflict. It's not because the people of DRC don't want to live with each other. They lived with each other before the colonialists came in, because there was so much interdependence, intermarriage, and all that. But when the colonialists came in, then they started telling us, well, this is so and so, this is so and so, you guys are different. They called us tribes, and that we were nations, okay? And some of us have ended up getting confused, that we have tribal wars in Africa, but in Europe, you've got, wars, between, countries, you've got wars between, the East, the West, and so forth. So they give a more dignified way of describing their conflicts. And that when it comes to Africa, when they create these conflicts for us, then it becomes tribal wars and so forth. Now, an interesting thing that just took place a couple of days ago. Some of you may have heard the Prime Minister of UK saying that they now have a way or made an arrangement with Rwanda that illegal immigrants coming to the UK or those who have been in the UK illegally can now be sent to Rwanda, and that the UK government will assist their relocation in Rwanda. Now, there are two ways in which you can look at this whole scenario. In one sense, I'd like to believe that President Kagame is saying, hey, if we have problems in Africa, why don't our people start seeking refuge and comfort in Africa? Let's take care of our own people. If our people are, go to Europe and then they are treated like the dogs and so forth, why don't those people come back to Africa and feel, that they can seek refuge within Africa? That is one aspect one may look at. I'd want to believe, that probably that's what, President Kagame had in mind, to have this deal with the British, that, those people who are coming to you as refugees, illegal and so forth, we can accommodate them here in Africa. We can take care of our own people. So that is one aspect one may look at. But also the other aspect is the UK is not sending those white Ukrainians who are seeking refuge in the UK to some other countries. I mean, they are welcoming them. So basically what they are saying is that we don't want to have too many refugees. We want to have enough room for white refugees coming from Ukraine, but we cannot have room for blacks coming from Africa. Okay, so there's a racist element to the whole thing. You may think that, well, the UK is being generous and, trying to help our people, by having them relocated in Rwanda. But at the same time, they are really saying, we got enough black people here already. And if we allow these people to keep building up, they are going to end up being a majority in our own country and will have no power, which is really what is like happening in the US, creating so much animosity against people of color, because the more of us are here, we're creating an imbalance in the white political power structure here, so that where the majority of black people would cast their votes, quite likely that party will win. Just like, in the last elections, that the black vote made a big difference in getting President Biden into office. So the same thing is happening in Europe and the UK in particular. The fact that the UK being one of the smallest countries in Europe, but yet the biggest empire of all countries. The amount of in the Middle East, in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America, and so forth. It was just so incompatible with their size. But right now, they're now beginning to feel the effect. That, okay, we colonized these people, plundered their resources. Now it's time for payback. But they want to define how that payback is. But for ourselves, as far as I'm concerned, I have no problem with somebody saying, okay, I'm going to the UK, I'm going to USA to regain the wealth that our ancestors created in those countries, okay? It's like our ancestors forced to come to America, developed America, and now that everything is looking good, they say, okay, you can go back. No compensation. Right now we're talking about reparations for human lives that were lost during slavery, for the labor that people provided and so forth. But right now we say, okay, you pay us back for what you did to our ancestors, and they have problems with that. And I think that is the same thing that is happening in the UK. They want to prevent the build-up of people of color in the UK, because when you talk of democracy, one man, one vote, if you have as many young blacks or people of color who are born in the UK or in the USA, they have the same rights to vote for whoever they want, like anybody else. So if there are more of you and there will be less of them, that will be a problem. And as you may also find out that the trend amongst white populations is that they are having less and less kids. I mean, they've got a negative growth right now. Their population growth is negative. I mean, they're not having as many babies as they used to. But for people of color, they say, no, there are too many coming up. So we've got more blacks being born, and there are less white people being born. So after a while, you're going to have more black or people of color in almost all the continents. And this is the thing that is scaring most of these former superpowers. And so the thing on Rwanda, I'm not being judgmental in any way, but I'm just saying as a Pan-Africanist, we need to make an analysis. What does that mean? Okay. What are the positive side about it? Is that we are demonstrating we can take care of our own. Okay. But at the same time, we don't agree with the racist aspect of that is so-called generosity, you know, that this British are trying to you know, to convey. So that is one piece of news, you know, that I think, you know, we need to have a debate on that. Again, you can imagine, you know, for any of our brothers and sisters who are going to be brought back to Rwanda, in another way, it can also help in the integration of Africa. You know, if some of our people can now see, you know, that you don't have to go to Europe to find greener pastures, but can also go within Africa. I mean, for instance, a lot has been happening, I mean, with the Somalis, I mean, they are all over now, you know, in many parts of Africa, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and so forth. And whilst the Organization on Immigration wants to look at them as a problem, but there are also a lot of positive things that are coming out of the Somali communities that have moved to other parts of Africa. I mean, they are bringing in commerce skills, they are bringing in business skills, and they are demonstrating, you know, that you can survive in Africa and actually contribute to the development, you know, of the country that you end up relocating. Whereas the immigration organization wants to put them as a problem. But we as Africans, we have to look at it, turn it around, another round. Okay, they have a conflict, it's not of their own making, and those who feel that, well, they can look at other options, they're not rushing to Europe or wherever, but they're saying, look, we can have our survival in Africa, and you know, that is exactly what they are doing. And I think any conflict has got its own positives and negatives, you know. So whereas the Western media wants to paint just the negative part of the dislocation that somehow people are forced into, but they don't look into the positive side of it. Even here in USA, you've got, you know, many areas, you know, where you've got large Somali populations, like in Minnesota. We even have a congresswoman of Somali origin. Okay, she's, you know, in the U.S. Congress, and she's contributing quite a lot. She's making our African voice heard directly into the halls of power in the USA. There are many other various communities, you know, in the USA where you've got predominant, you know, large Somali populations, and you find that some of them have really turned around some of the small towns. They bring in businesses, and most of them are actually much more educated than the communities where they are relocated. So in essence, you know, my message today really is that when we hear this news about the British having the agreement with Rwanda to take some of the so-called illegal immigrants to Rwanda, could be the negative part of it. To me, is that the base of it is very racist, but also the positive side of it is that Rwanda is saying, look, we can take care of our own. And if the racists can help to resettle those people in Rwanda, I don't see any problem with it. And hopefully when those people relocate to Rwanda, they will see that, there's more that they can contribute to Rwanda as much as they'll be getting, safety and, comfort in Rwanda. So that is really how I look at it. But as Pan-Africanists, we must always analyze the situation. Don't let CNN try to define for us, that, the British have done such a wonderful thing, but at the same time, they won't tell you that, no, they are scared, that if they have too many Black people relocated to the UK, their kids will have the same right to vote, as citizens by birth and so forth, and that is going to change the power dynamics. It may not happen today, but they are projecting 20 years from now, UK could be majority people of color, and what is that going to mean and so forth. Well, that's what I have today. Again, I want to emphasize that please, let's promote our app. There are 1.4 billion of us. So if we can have 1.4 billion people downloading our app and making use of it and so forth, I think that would be a wonderful thing to do. We don't have to wait to be told by CNN or BBC that, there's a new app, that ILoveBlackPeople have come up with, and then we start rushing up to it. I know there's still some of us who feel, well, the message is much clearer when the white man says it than when it comes from a fellow Black person, but we want to change that around. Let's do it for ourselves. And again, want to thank you. If there are any comments, I may have 1 minute or so. I can take some 1 or 2 questions, or otherwise, I wish you a great weekend, and we meet again next week. Any comments?
There are no comments.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I see there's somebody raised their hand there. It's Daniel Fanboli. Okay. Well, if there are any comments, I'll look at them later, and then we can discuss them next week. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Mapundela, for your time. If there are questions, you can just, okay, there is a question. It's like a comment from Denisha Buzz saying the vicious assassinations of our people that took place in Rwanda need to be reopened and investigated. It's a comment from Denisha Buzz.
Right. Well, I get that. I mean, like, there's no country with unresolved issues. Okay. So again, it is up to the people for Rwanda to resolve some of the internal issues they have. But as you know, that the spirit of the AU is to try and assist each and every African country to deal with their issues, with matters, that the AU can be able to assist with. But also at the same time, we must take into account that there's no nation which is totally perfect. We all have issues, but we cannot be tied down by issues of yesterday to make progress for the future. They say you can forgive, but you cannot forget. I mean, that's really how I would look at it. So I do sympathize, with the person who's talking about, well, we need to look into the previous issues and so forth. But again, it's really for the people of Rwanda decide that, but also at the same time, I think that the whole of Africa is very much appreciative of the peace that we have in Rwanda now. Rwanda is really in the forefront of bringing about integration, of Southern Africa, of Africa, and so forth. And so let's deal with the positive, and then of course we don't say forget the negative, but we have to find a way, a constructive way of dealing with the negative aspects of our lives. Okay, anybody else?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, and we'll meet next weekend.
Yes. Thank you very much, sir, for your time.
You're most welcome.
Yes. If there are questions, they will be answered next
Yeah.
session.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yes. Up next, we're going to have a lead developer explaining to us more about the app. Yes. Alex, can you hear us?
Hello, everyone. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, great. Let me just all right, so I think today marks, I think the 3rd or 4th week since we released our apps, and an exciting update we were able to make this past week is including notifications on the app. So let's say, for example, you've gone out, before what we had was that you'll actually have to open the app to be able to recommend businesses. But I know when you go out and you have your GPS location turned on, by using the app, you're able to get notifications to recommend businesses that are close by you. So we found this interesting in a way that the app actually acts as a reminder to recommend places, and not, it's more proactive that way. So in case you don't have it in mind at a specific time to recommend, you do not get notifications to recommend a place. So I think, again, as I keep on asking every week, it will be super helpful if we can get feedback from everyone using the app in terms of how the notifications are working, whether it's something that you find useful, what you can also improve with the notifications. And we have this updated on both Android and iOS. And something very important to note that is when you download the app, you are required to give it access to your location information. And this helps with this basically helps with allowing us to send you the notification based on the current area you're in right now. Then one thing I'd like to also update folks on, in case you haven't tried to recommend, like for you to recommend a business, you actually need to sign up. The very first time you download the app, you have an option to log in, sign up, or skip. So if you've downloaded the app before, you can actually log in if you already have login credentials. But in the case where it's first time downloading the app, you are required to sign up. That way, once you sign up, we are able to credit all recommendations that you send our way. So this is this from our end, it's just about having proper records. So for example, if folks are making recommendations, how do you validate whether these are Black-friendly places? In case we have follow-up questions, we need to follow up with the folks that recommended. Then also this helps us to just provide you with a list of businesses you recommended in case you might want to visit those businesses again or share them with your friends and family. So by signing up, we are able to credit any business that you recommend, we're able to credit it to you. So I think that's one important aspect. We'll love you to try all those features and give us feedback in terms of what's working, what's not, ideas on what you'd want us to improve. Yeah, and I think that's it for this week, with the major update being the notifications. Yvonne, I don't know if we have any questions from folks on the call.
I don't think we have questions. Let me check also on Facebook. Yes, there are no questions, but in case there is any question regarding the app, you can just type it in the comment section. Yes, we have our lead developer to answer that question.
Oh, I see a question here. Somebody is asking what's the name of the app. So the app is called I Love Black People Safe Places. And if you go to both iOS and the App Store, search for I Love Black People Safe Places. We do have another app that's called I Love Black People by Bill Murray. That's not the app. The one that you need to download says I Love Black People Safe Places. Then I think Awad or Yvonne, you can probably share a link for the iOS and Android downloads for folks who are on the call and haven't yet had a chance to check out the app.
All right, we'll share the links for both iOS and Android in the chat room for both. But on Facebook, we can see it on description. You can download it on Facebook. We have included the links on the description.
Yeah. Then I do see another question from Zoe, who's asking, are there any plans to make sure the app doesn't consume as much space? And I know in addition to that, we had feedback from the community again. Somebody asked, can we use app? So for example, when you're not, you don't have an internet connection, can you use the app? So with regards to being able to use the app offline and also consuming as minimal space as possible, those are things we are working on with the future updates. So say, for example, you're planning to visit a particular place, we might actually set updates where you can actually download the location information before actually getting to that place. So if you're traveling to a new place, assuming you don't have data or Wi-Fi in that area, if you had data set aside before, you will be able to use this in offline mode. So that's a feature we are working on. We haven't released that yet, but that's one thing we are working on, trying to ensure that even if you're offline, you're able to use the app. Then with regards to space, I think we've been quite I'd say we've been quite intentional with the space that the app takes on your phone. Currently, I think the app takes around 65 megabytes on Android, which is relatively low compared to a lot of the applications out there on the Play Store. But we are constantly trying to improve and make sure we only use as minimal space as possible on the application. But yeah, if you guys still have more feedback around the space the app is taking, we'd love to hear from you. Do you think it's taking a lot of space, just enough, or yeah, we'd love to get that feedback from you based on your personal experiences with other apps and also the kind of devices you're running. Do you feel the app is taking too much space, or is the space just okay? All right, do we have any more questions? Okay, I don't see any more.
Is there any legal restriction for using the app?
They said legal restriction?
Yes.
No, I wouldn't say so. Currently our app is available globally. You can use it. You can use it anywhere you go travel to. So we don't have any restrictions in that sense. The only thing that we really do ask is that when you're recommending a business, make sure it's a business that you've actually interacted with. because these recommendations are actually, we are hoping these recommendations are based off your personal experiences. So just recommending a place because you've heard about it, that's not really something we would recommend or want for this space, because we actually hope other people will be able to use your recommendations based experiences there. So like that's one caveat I'll add. Do recommend places that you actually experienced. But other than that, I wouldn't say we do have any legal restrictions in terms of how it's used. Then I also see somebody asking whether it's available on iOS. Yes, it's available on iOS as well. So we have it available on iOS and Android. And I think Awad should be sharing a link on the chat section for both iOS and Android. All right. Any more questions, Yvonne?
No, I think that's all.
Okay. All right, great. As always, thank you so much for the feedback. All the feedback that's coming in is what's making it possible in terms of our team being able to build this app. I don't think we could have done it without all the support we've been receiving from the community. Yeah, then tune in throughout this week and next week for updates that we're going to be releasing. I think that's all from my end, Yvonne.
All right, thank you so much, Alex, for giving us an update on our application and also letting the community know what they need to understand about it, and always to make sure that their location is on in order for them to receive notifications. For any feedbacks or anything which you'd like to share with us, kindly reach out to us in the chat room or even on WhatsApp. You can just message the moderators or any of the admins who greatly appreciate that. So on next, we are going to have Nana Akua for a healthcare lecture. Yes, Nana Akua, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly. Welcome to ILoveBlackPeople healthcare lecture.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I have tried to instill hey, Yvonne. Hello, everyone. I see Crystal's face. I see Collins, Christopher, Minga, David, Joyce. Welcome, everyone. Look, I just took my bonnet off too, Joyce. Look, she pushing her head in. Listen, that's me too. I have it in a little style. That's the style for a couple of days. Anyway, welcome everyone. Thank you. Yes, I see you. Good job. However you want to carry it is fine with me. You all just might not want to see me in my body. But so today we are talking about stress management. We're talking about how to relax our mind, our body, and spirit, how that impacts our health. We have to really pay attention to that. We've talked up to this point a lot about the physical needs of the body. And so we also know that it's important to address the mind, our mental, emotional, psychological health, our spiritual health. So I don't know if Yvonne is able to share the lesson packet that I sent. I think if you're able to do that for me, that would be easier for me. And I have not replaced my battery on my laptop, so I'm also connected by my phone this week in case it just sort of decides to cut off. So hopefully we've addressed that issue so that we're not interrupted. So what I would like to do, I'm traveling today, so I'm a little stressed. So let me have us all maybe take a breath. Can we do that? We'll talk a little bit about breathing exercises today, but let's start with a demonstration. How about that? So one of my favorite conscious breathing exercises is fire breaths. And there are a couple of ways to do that. We can do it in and out of the nose, or we can do it in the nose, out the mouth. Okay. Even just that little bit is very helpful. But let's do a couple of those, shall we? Because thank God we don't have to think about breathing, right? It's one of those both voluntary and involuntary actions. And when we do consciously breathe and we do voluntary take breaths and exercise our lung muscle, that organ muscle, it really helps to detoxify it. It helps strengthen and tonify it. And it brings relaxation throughout the body because we are enhancing and increasing the circulation of oxygen through the body. And so if we do that on a very regular, very conscious basis, we can get really good benefits. So let's do just maybe 10 repetitions of fire breaths. Y'all ready? Okay, we're gonna say 1, 2, breathe. We're gonna do 10. Let's do the first one, the in and out of the nose, okay? So ready? 1, 2, breathe. And I'd like you to just stay really still and really calm as you return back to your normal breathing. Taking slow, deep breaths. And just allowing all the sensations you're feeling throughout your body. A couple of slow, deep breaths. And we don't have to do a lot of moving right now because we've really increased our circulation. And some of us may feel some tingling and some lightheadedness, so let's not move a lot. And just enjoy the sensation. Right, how is that? How are we feeling? Still feel like you want to stay still, right? Whew. Great, so I needed that. And sometimes you just have to do what you need to do, right? So let's move forward. So Yvonne, if you can you share the screen? Are you prepared for that? I know I sent the packet, I think that was maybe last week. And if not, I can talk a bit, but I'd like to not fumble with doing that today. So what we're going to focus on today, while hopefully that's being brought up. Oh, awesome. Okay, Award is doing it. Okay, thank you. I knew either of you would get that together. So it looks a little weird. I'm sure you'll get it together. So we're going to talk about just sort of the symptoms of stress, what stress is, how we'll identify it, how we will know that we're stressed, right? And just how we can handle it, because it's one thing to feel stressed or know that you're stressed, and that's key, but then it's also a matter or a question of what to do about it when we are feeling stressed, when we are triggered with various stressors in our lives. Okay. And in addition to dealing with that, one of our handouts that we'll focus on will give us very specific directions. Well, let me not say that. Initially, we'll give very specific examples of what it is to feel stress or what stress is, but then there'll be a number of ways that we'll talk about how to handle it. We'll talk about what happens physically in the body. We'll talk about some of the hormones are involved, some of the physiological things that occur when the body is stressed. And then a number of things like breathing exercises, like massage, like reflexology, like aromatherapy, like flower remedies to balance the emotions. Just a number of things that can be done to address stress. Because one thing for sure, we will always have stress. We will always encounter some sort of stress. And let's just deal with what a working definition of stress is, because then you'll know very well that this is sort of unavoidable. But what we can do is have in place how to handle it or how to address it. So a working definition of stress is a state of physical or mental tension or something inducing it. Another definition is pressure or strain that tends to distort a body. So that could be our physical body. And of course, we're talking about other things that can cause stress on something, on a item, on a process, on a person. But it is basically pressure or strain, tension, you know. And so we know that as things change, as we move our bodies, we're putting stress or strain on our joints, you know, on different parts of our body. So again, it's not a bad thing. And again, it's unavoidable. So, and I know that Award is working with making this look good, which is fine. I think everyone can still see it, but let's still start with what we can see as some of the manipulation is done. So common symptoms of stress. We know that in order to handle stress properly, we must be able to recognize, you know, what it is and what it looks like, what it feels like. So some signs or symptoms of stress could be depression. It could be difficulty falling asleep. It may be extreme tiredness or fatigue, feelings of anger or resentment, frequent absence from work or other obligations. It could look like impatience or irritability. It could look like the inability to concentrate. It could look like a loss of pleasure in life, an increase or decrease in appetite, muscular aches for no apparent reason, stomach or intestinal disturbances, sweaty palms, tension headaches, performance anxiety, and many others. So this is not an all-inclusive list, but these are some good examples of some of the common symptoms of stress. Okay, and I'm sure with somebody, so can you advance to the next page? So I don't know if this will end up being a good thing or a bad thing, someone else controlling it. But if we go to the next page in the handout, we'll have many different examples of what looks like. It may be let me, I'm forgetting what the handout looked like. I just pulled it out of my, I pulled out my physical copy. Okay, so let me hold off on that for a second. So in terms of dealing with stress, oh yeah, that pink handout is what I was looking for. But let's just talk about methods of handling stress, because the pink handout, the 101 stress relievers, is sort of an example of that. So once we've identified what stress is, we have to know how to address it. We have to know what to do about it, how to relieve the stress, right? So we may exercise the tension away. We may learn how to deal with negative people, conflict resolution, mediation, things of that nature, effective communication. All of these are ways that we may end up dealing with stress. You may join a community club, group, organization, something of that nature, to help you spend your time or use your time wisely and efficiently. You may reassess or change your plan for life, your daily routine, your schedule, kind of altering how you move about the world. These things can really help with stress as well. You may decide to tap into your spiritual beliefs, your innermost power, pray, meditate more, focus on praying for ways to alleviate your stress, or to alleviate your stressors, the sources or the root of your stress if possible. And then of course, always implementing self-care tactics. That's always going to be a good option for you. Make sure that you are taking time out for yourself. If you know what makes you happy, things that bring you joy, things that make you laugh, smile, you know, really tap into what it is you really enjoy doing. A lot of times we get so involved with the things that we must do. This is all about looking at the things that we love to do, that we want to do, that we enjoy to do. One of my most fervent prayers is, you know, asking God to always give me everything I need. And I usually will say, and most of what I want, right? You know, and so, you know, I don't want to be selfish and be like, I want everything I want, everything I need. No, but we of course know we have to do certain things. We need certain things. But by the grace of God, we will also be able to do those things that we want, those things that we enjoy. And so that is the part that I'm saying we have to tap into. Really put effort into what really brings you joy, what really makes you happy. Not going to school and getting good grades, not working and making money, not taking care of the children, not, you know, paying bills and whatever family obligations and things of that nature. But, you know, things that are on this list here. So dance, go for a walk, go fishing, daydream. Right? Daydream that you're on the beach, or daydream that you're climbing, you know, the mountain, or going on a nature hike, or walking a nature trail. Right, you know, write down your fears, write down your dreams, write your congressperson, right? Write your, you know, whatever your local politician. Make time to play, laugh, run, you know, skip, jump rope, you know, do jumping jacks. Anything that can just be a very simple task, but all of these things can be used to relieve stress. Stop and look out the window. I stay in my window. I'm also a little nosy, but I mean, you know, if it'll kill two birds with one stone, I can know what's going on in the neighborhood and I can just take a little break and daydream for a second, or see something that's going on outside of what's happening with me. Call an old friend, cry, ask for help. Tell someone you love them, tell someone a joke, listen to the birds, listen to nature sounds if you're not in nature. You know, they have, they used to be in CDs, but now we can download everything. But right, I used to have all these, I still do, all these CDs with nature sounds, the ocean, the birds chirping, thunderstorms or rain or waterfall. Listen to nature. If you're not in nature, download those sounds. Work out at the gym, practice yoga, do a good deed, do something to help someone else, compliment someone. So there are so many things. And this list gives 101. And I just tried to kind of go through just a few of those things. And just to, if we can advance down a little, just to get a little bit into, and I don't know how well you're seeing this, but if you are in the WhatsApp group, you do have this packet. But this, that's better. I'm sure it still can't really be seen that great, but this is not that important because we're not going to go into it very detailed, but this just gives you an idea of how stress physiologically impacts the body, okay? This is, and if you do need these handouts at the end, we certainly can give you my email if you're not in the WhatsApp group, so you can get this. So please, if you're not seeing it well, or you can't save it, or whatever the case may be, I can forward you a copy of this. But we know that there are different glands that are responsible in the body. We know the pituitary gland, it signals the adrenal glands to release stress hormones. And then the adrenal glands, they produce stress hormones that basically allow the body to manage stress. So even though you may not feel stressed emotionally, physically, the body can be stressed or experiencing stress or handling stress and you not even know it. This happens when all of these things we already talked about first in terms of some of the symptoms of stress. Even if you're not consciously aware that, hey, I'm stressed, your body may physically feel that stress and that tension. This is how or why stress can cause certain physical ailments. And pretty much every physical ailment can either be caused or worsened by stress, whether it's diabetes, whether it's heart disease, whether it's hypertension, whether it's arthritis. Every condition pretty much can be either caused specifically by stress or at least made worse by stress. So handling stress is very important. So, and a lot of times in my experience over the years, I've encountered people who are very hesitant and very reluctant to admit that they have stress. And those are probably the ones you have to worry most about. And I think one real way of growing and developing and really being in tune with yourself is being able to admit when you're stressed and being able to address that, because holding it in or being in denial or pretending that you don't have stress will only hurt you in the end. Okay. A lot of times men will do this. Strong Black women type will do this. And I've been one of those. And I've really had to just learn to say, okay, look, this is stressing me out, you know, or I'm feeling a little stressed right now. Or, and you talk, and it's for the person that you're dealing with or the group that you're dealing with to know where you're coming from, where you are, right? But also it's talking you through it. So it's sort of like a self-talk, like, okay, I'm acknowledging how I'm feeling. And then usually you're going to then do the next step to help get through that. So it's sort of working and walking yourself through that process. So acknowledge when you're feeling a certain way. And I just think that that improves your connection and your interaction with people anyway. You know, me as a mother, I've had to start doing that years ago with my children, because, you know, sometimes children could care less or couldn't care less about how parents feel or what you may be experiencing, because they're usually a little selfish and they're just wanting what they want, right? So you sometimes have to say, listen, I'm human too. I'm having my own experiences. I'm having my own feelings, and this is what I'm going through. And so I'm a little stressed, or I'm not able to do that right now because I feel X, Y, or Z. So it's important to share that with people you're caring for, that you maybe have a certain authority over, or people that you're maybe working under or with in a job capacity. Either way, it adds that human side to it, and it lets them know, listen, we have to all be considerate of how we are all doing so that we can together progress. So that's very important. So start owning how you're feeling, express how you're feeling. If we can advance down a little bit, and in that second handout, it gives you sort of, you know, some ideas, some herbal teas to use for stress. And we're going to get into that a little later. And I know the writing is small, so I won't bother going through that now. The one thing I like on this page, however, is it talks about yawning, right? So yawning can relieve tension, right? So who knew, right? So yawn really loud and big and reach your arms and stretch your arms. Give a really big yawn when you have a yawn that comes on, because that can just emotionally and physically help you to relieve that stress that's in the body. So advancing down a bit, let's talk about anxiety. So they are two very different things, but sometimes they kind of come hand in hand. Or I think it's important to take note of each one. So if we can scroll down to the next handout where it says anxiety, we know that anxiety can be seen as a fear response that has gone away, awry. See, I can't even read the words myself. But fear is at the base, it's normally emotion kind of built up or built in to something else that's going on. And then there's sort of that panic reaction or in response to fear or whatever other root emotion that may be there. And so and anyone who has experienced anxiety knows that, of course, it happens internally and emotionally, but also there's a very physical impact with anxiety. People who have panic attacks or anxiety attacks may have physical expressions of that, where there's sweating, where there's different body movements, or some people turn red and the skin gets really flush. So there are all kinds of physical things that happen. And then of course, emotionally or mentally, there's a lot going inside the head, and panic sets in, and all kinds of racing thoughts and different fears and issues are coming about. So yeah, if we can advance down a bit, then we know that there are many things to do to address anxiety as well. Yoga is a good way, or whatever physical exercise may be good for you. We know that behavioral modification or talk therapy, addressing whatever phobias or fears that people have, can address anxiety. Aromatherapy can be really healing for anxiety. There are specific essential oils that can be really helpful in that regard. Spruce, hyacinth, lavender, bitter orange, jasmine, these are all good, really essential oils that are great for anxiety. And then probably one of the best and probably well-known herbs for anxiety is kava kava. So kava kava is a sedative type herb that is really good for panic attacks and calming anxiety. Okay, I know we're not, I think we're not on the right page. If you're able to scroll down, okay, I can't click on it, right? Yeah, okay, somebody else is controlling the screen. So yeah, scroll down a bit. But they list a medicinal tea that can be used also for anxiety. It can include valerian, passion flower, lemon balm, orange blossoms, anise seed, and peppermint. I would definitely also include kava kava in that. And while you're scrolling, keep scrolling down, because I also included in this discussion grief. So again, these are sort of emotions and issues that can be impacted by stress and have both a emotional or mental impact as well as a physical impact. Sorrow is a mother, right? A lot of people during these days and times are experiencing a lot of grief. There's been a lot of illness, a lot of death. And so sorrow or grief is sort of a big issue that maybe a lot of people are experiencing that hadn't previously had to really in your face deal with. And so there are many herbs that will help with grief, meditation, therapy, things of that nature are excellent for grief. One of the flower remedies that we'll talk about in a little bit, gorse, is really good for grief as well. So we will advance on and talk a little bit about that when we get to that section. I wanted to, and I know we kind of did a hands-on breathing exercise, right? But I wanted to, I think the next handout, and we might be out of order, definitely my packet that I'm looking at here is not in order probably with how I first scanned it in and submitted it. But okay, great, this is what I'm looking for, this one here. So we did an exercise, a breathing exercise earlier, and you can stop right there. And we did what was called a fire breath, but this handout talks about deep breathing. And it just talks about how that process looks, you know, what it physically or physiologically does to the body when you inhale, right? You know, you breathe in through the nose, the chest expands, the diaphragm contracts, the belly expands. When you exhale through the nose, right? And that is the one we did, in and out of the nose, the chest relaxes on exhale, the diaphragm relaxes, the belly contracts, right? But we know that there are many benefits to this type of breathing. It detoxifies and releases toxins, it releases tension, it relaxes the mind, body, and brings clarity. We know that it can relieve pain. We know that it strengthens the immune system. It improves quality of the blood. It strengthens the lungs, improves cellular regeneration, and elevates mood, right? And hopefully after this handout is another handout about the benefits. I came across these things and I just thought I would include them because I just felt like, and anything that kind of has really good graphics and it kind of gives good a layout to kind of make the information look more interesting, I always try to include. But this just sort of expands the explanation on the benefits of deep breathing, right? So we've kind of talked about all of these, but it just kind of gives a little more detail as to how and why it eases pain, or how it elevates mood, how it improves your blood, and so on and so forth. And I thought an interesting thing here was that 70% of toxins are released simply by breathing properly. And if you aren't breathing properly, your toxins don't get released correctly. So breathing can have a lot of benefits. It will allow us to physically do something with our anxiety, to physically, relax our bodies, but it will also internally really help us cleanse and detox. So, and we can scroll down. So there's probably a couple more handouts, but we won't go over those. If you can scroll down for me. I think the next thing that I'd like, we're gonna surpass this one. This just is a type of breathing exercise that you can kind of do on your own. And I'm noticing as I'm kind of looking over, everybody's giving me your email. I'm not gonna be able to email you in this way if Yvonne, or I think Award is doing the thing, so I'm not going to add another thing for you to do right now. What I will do is put my email here. So please, if you listed your email, please email me instead. Okay, nanaakua1@gmail.com. Just send me an email, say, please send me the handouts. It can be as simple as that. So if you'll scroll down past this handout, what I'd like to talk about next is the flower remedies. And I'm not sure if that's what is listed next because I added some handouts. Oh, okay. Yeah, we can scroll through all of these. So yeah, what I wanted to do was give you as many breathing exercises as I had compiled years ago. This was a really not so great attempt at cutting and pasting. And some of it is crooked, as you'll see. But I pulled information years ago from different books that I had that gave different types of breathing exercises. You'll have plenty of time. You can just take a whole month and try one every day, or spread it out, do one a week and keep doing that same one for a week, and you'll probably get through half the year with all of the different breathing exercises that are listed here. But I really want you to take, okay, you can pause here. So I really wanted you to just really focus on how important breathing is and expose you to all the various breathing exercises. Now, touch therapy, and there are all kinds of touch therapy. Massage is one, and that's probably the most noted one. But we know that healing touch, or just touching another human being, is healing in and of itself, right? We know that, and I feel really saddened, and I told the story recently about a friend of mine who had stated that they hadn't been touched in, I don't know, they couldn't remember the last time they had been touched. And that made me sad. And so, and not even in a intimate sexual way am I referring. I'm referring to just the human touch, just having interaction and touching another person. I know COVID has probably decreased that for a lot of people for good reason, but just evaluate that for yourself. You know, are you in a situation where you are touched, you know? And if not, I mean, great, embrace that, hug your loved ones, you know, touch a hand, an arm, rub a back, you know, show and make that actual human connection. That in and of itself can be really, really healing. But in addition to that, if you don't have that, or, you know, that's not a situation you're comfortable with, professionally, there are massage therapists and other touch therapists that heal through touch. And there are many benefits to massage. We know that there are many different types of massage that can heal the body. But in general, we know that massage helps reduce tension in the muscles. It relieves muscle pain. It improves sleep quality. It improves or relieves stress. which is why we are talking about it here. We know that it improves joint mobility, improves your quality of sleep, boosts your immune function, improves your mental alertness, and many other things, right? So we know that massage is very important and very healing. And if you're not able to go out to seek a professional massage therapist, you can do self-massage. So this handout here talks about some things that you may be able to do yourself, not maybe all of these pictures that are listed here, but you can rub your own shoulders, you can rub your lower back, you can rub your feet, your neck, your hands. Sometimes we will, and you can stop at the reflexology one, that'd be great. And we know that we can massage our feet, but sometimes just as we ignore our feet, unless they are hurting you, right? We also maybe ignore our hands. So unless someone who maybe types a lot or have developed carpal tunnel or some of these issues to where your hands ache, or if you have arthritis in your hands, or people who are hairstylists or barbers, or other carpenters, people who physically use their hands, unless you've been in a situation where you've had the decreased mobility of the function of your fingers or your hands, you maybe would not appreciate this. But even focus on just rubbing your hands, your fingers, doing sort of some self-care and self-massage of your hands, your wrists, and just know that you're going to be touching different parts of the body through the reflex zones or points on your hands and your feet. And this is called reflexology, right? So if you scroll down a bit, so we know that this handout here has the different areas on the feet that correspond to different parts of the body. So the same is true for the hands, right? And so really reflexology can be really healing, really bring about stress release, really physically help the body function and go throughout your normal daily routine. So this is important as well. And if we are able to scroll down, let's see what the next handout is. And again, this is just showing the different parts on the feet. They correspond to the entire body. And you'll get time to kind of go through this on your own. I included the hands here. So again, you'll be able to refer to this later and know how it's all connected. It's all connected. And even the ear, there are different points and zones on the ear that correspond to the entire body. So this is called reflexology. So this is a very specialized therapeutic, you can also scroll through this. This is a very therapeutic, specialized massage that manipulates the reflex zones and points on the hands, feet, and the ears. There's even zones some people do on the face, but true reflexology is really the hands and feet. And then we got into auricular acupressure and acupuncture where they've included the ear. You can keep scrolling down. See that beautiful rose quartz and angel light crystals there. I'm not going to get so much into the crystals today. I want to talk about, we spent some time with that, I think the last cycle for this week on stress. You can keep scrolling down. I want to kind of highlight the flower remedies and some of the herbs for stress because I've made reference to those earlier. But just know as we're scrolling through, these are handouts on crystals. We know that also crystals can help assist in healing the body. These are natural formations from minerals, from caves on the earth that God has given us. Some people will just call them gemstones, some people will call them crystals, some people will call them rocks, right? And they all naturally have healing properties, just as herbs do. There are crystals that just have certain energies and healing power within them, all natural from the earth, that can assist with depression, anxiety, insomnia, headaches, fear, grief, any number of issues that you have, there are crystals that can be used to help bring the body back into balance and create a healthful healing situation in your life. So yeah, so let's stop here. So flower essences or flower remedies, these are the flowering parts of trees and shrubs that are used specifically to heal the emotions. Okay. God, in all of God's wisdom and mercy and grace and all of that good stuff, allows us to kind of balance our emotions, to heal ourselves of all of our various feelings with these flowering parts of these trees and shrubs. The English flower remedies consist of 38 remedies. There are also something called the Australian flower remedies, which I think are 42. But essentially, there are a number of these remedies that balance the emotions. So whether you're dealing with fear or resentment or mental exhaustion, anger, irritability, anxiety, intolerance, if you're managing a trauma, any heightened emotional state, flower remedies are there to bring you back into balance. And so here, so since we stopped on aspen and beech, let's talk about those. And this just gives you an example of how they kind of work. So aspen, you can keep it here. So aspen, for example, is good for treating a person who's really apprehensive, right? They have a sense of dread. They kind of like, I don't know why, but I just don't want to do this. Or I don't know why, I just, I'm dreading packing for this trip that I have today. That's me. That's really happening, right? I'm leaving today and I have not packed. So it's like an unexplainable anxiety. My first time on a plane since COVID. I don't do vaccines. So yeah, so I'm having some apprehensions, right? I probably could use some aspen. Who knew that this was going to be the example that applied to me? But very good. Glad that we stopped here. And I'm okay with sharing and being vulnerable to say just how these are used. So this is like really real life. And these remedies and the explanations of those or the uses of these really make you evaluate yourself. And these won't necessarily be great aspects, right, of yourself, right? So this is, you know, you've heard the saying, the good, the bad, and the ugly. These will kind of help you get through the bad and the ugly, right? So it's okay because you have to be honest with yourself. There's a remedy here. Well, we'll do beech since it's here, but this is for the person who's very critical and intolerant of others. Usually this is an arrogant type of person, don't really, you know, they're not really patient with people. They need beech. So here's just another example, like this is not the best aspect of this person, right? And maybe it's not the best aspect of the person, but for that person to move past that and get to their better or their higher self, they would need to balance out that intolerance for someone else or that arrogance. And so you would then do your beech remedy. If you'll scroll down a bit, I'd like to get to impatience. Well, actually, I'd like to get to gorse because I mentioned that earlier. Keep going. No, you're and it's alphabetical, so keep going. And so I mentioned gorse earlier in terms of dealing with grief, because again, we have to identify when we're having an issue, and we have to know. You can stop here. We have to know what to do about it, right? So this is for the person who kind of lost hope. And I kind of usually just throw this in with grief, and that's not all grief is, but sometimes in these situations, this is the person that just feels like, oh my gosh, this is just so terrible. I'm so defeated. What's the use? What's the point of going on? You know, this thing, this trauma, this incident that has happened is so horrible. And this is the person that's desperate for some kind of relief. They're feeling really defeated. They're feeling like, why go on? Gorse is excellent for that. And this could be anything. This could be a test that you studied really hard for and didn't do as well as anticipated. This could be a driving test. My older daughter just got her license recently, you know, and had a difficulty in a particular part of the test and felt really defeated. But of course, a couple of days later, she went on and did it, and now she has her license. But these are things we'll always encounter, just like stress, we'll always have stress. And there'll always be some things that will defeat us. And I'm putting this in air quotes because we're not truly defeated, but it's a momentary state of feeling in that way. And so that we don't stay in that, this is why we would turn to something like gorse. And we do not, the thing about all of these remedies and the reason I focus on this, we do not have to be long suffering. Okay, if you ain't learned anything else today, repeat after me. I do not have to be long suffering. Right? We don't have to keep going through these emotions, these feelings. They're temporary. Even if it's in a situation you can't maybe get out of right at this moment, flower remedies will help you change your mindset about it so that you can still get through it. And it won't have as emotionally draining of an impact on you. It won't, you know, your whole disposition will change. You'll be like, okay, I got this, no problem. I'm gonna study harder, or I'm studying something different, or I'm gonna do something different and pass this test. Or, okay, no, I'm gonna go in with a better, you know, thought about my coworker, and they're not gonna irritate me or agitate me in the way. I have a good friend that is doing a job, it's a new job, and she feels that her supervisor never compliments her or gives her any kind of encouraging words, and it's really getting to her, and she's like, it's almost like she wants me to fail and she never wants to acknowledge when I'm doing good. So, you know, you get a remedy like this, or maybe not this one in particular, but the remedy then doesn't change that person, right? But it changes how you feel about what someone else is doing or whatever outside influence that you will never ever be able to change, right? So all of these are about you, helping you change how you view things. This is putting your rose-colored glasses on. That's another expression, right? And there's nothing wrong with rose-colored glasses, right? There's this phrase of, oh, you need to take your rose-colored glasses off because you're only seeing, you know, the good side or the good part or what have you. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we live in reality. We do, we really do. And if I need some assistance or some type of help to help me have a rosy, sunny disposition and feel better about things and look at things more positively, this is what we need to do. And flower remedies can really help with that. So if we can advance on, I know we're drawing near. If we can advance on, I won't go through any more of the flower remedies, so you can scroll through these. As you're scrolling through, I have a few favorites. Hornbeam deals with if you are just mentally exhausted, there's just a lot going on, you have a lot of tasks to juggle, you can stop here, and you just need kind of, you know, the ability to kind of get through it, and you feel like you're muddling through life and all of that. Hornbeam is good for that. There's another one called walnut. Walnut is great for people who are in transition, like you had some kind of change, you moved, or you ended a relationship, or you got a new job, or whatever the case may be. This helps for people who are in transition, okay? So other ways, other natural plants that help to deal with stress and anxiety, there are a number of herbs. This handout is more so talking about taking them in tea form. Definitely, yes, please scroll down. Definitely, if you're just a tea drinker and you drink tea every morning or evening or what have you, yes, implement these teas for your morning tea or your after dinner tea. However, if you really need these teas to calm you or get you through a certain situation, you may need to use these herbs in capsule form or in liquid extract form, because teas, sometimes you will just need to drink so much before you really get the benefit, that it would be too slow of a response. So if you scroll down a bit, a lot of these that are listed here, they're some I've mentioned kava, but there are many other nervine or sedative herbs like skullcap, lemon balm. You can keep scrolling, hops, oat straw. So this handout will give you just ideas of how to use this chamomile, these that you'll see. They'll have an impact on your ability to handle stress and anxiety, but a lot will have other helpful uses as well. And this is how you'll know which ones to use. So, okay, you're having gastrointestinal issues, but you're also feeling really nervous and not asleep, then you may use something like that. Or you can start right here. Or, for example, you may need something to help you sleep or deal with some pain, or like I said, gastrointestinal issues. Valerian handles all of those issues, right? And valerian is not one you're going to want to do in a tea because it smells really bad and tastes just as bad. So you'll probably do this one in capsule form, right? But valerian is one of my favorites. It's an excellent, excellent herb. So it's kind of used for a number of issues. If you're having pain, if you are having trouble sleeping, if you're having some gastrointestinal disturbances, valerian is really excellent for. So there are many, many uses for herbs in general, even these nervine and sedative herbs. So it's going to help you with your stress and your anxiety, but it may also have some other added benefits, okay? So let me just pause and scroll through some questions or comments. Thank you all for your good comments here. Yes, thank the host for you for doing this. I appreciate it too. Thank you, Award, for posting my email. So yes, if you want the handouts, feel free. Yeah, and you can leave it here. You can email me. Okay, so I think most of the comments were people putting their emails and requesting the information. So yeah, so please email me. I know several, like I had mentioned earlier, I saw people were dropping their emails. Yes, John. Any form of love is going to relieve stress. Love is always the answer to the question. I just read that quote earlier. So if it's making love, if it's expressing love in some other kind of way, showing love by helping someone do something, giving a gift, saying some loving words, all of those expressions of love can be really helpful for stress relief. Yeah, and some people love the sound, nature sounds, all of those can be really, really great. Then it just depends on what you like. I'm not one that likes thunder and all of that, but some people really like that. You know, I would like my rain sound without the thunder, right? Or I really prefer like a stream or a waterfall. I love the ocean sound. So all of these things are great and can really help create an environment. And that's the other thing I think I'll add here, is create your own sacred space. And this ties into not only emotional and psychological healing, but spiritual healing. Create a sacred space where you can go and create an environment where you can relax, where you can focus on yourself, where you can pray and meditate, where you can journal, where you can go and sit and hold your crystals and get the healing energy of it, where you can use your diffuser with your essential oils to create the aromas to, you know, create whatever healing that you need. But create that space where you play your nature sounds, or your sacred space may be outside on the bank of a creek or something, right? Or it may be at the base of a waterfall. But have a space where you go and you create what you need to feel well. So whether that's a physical type of wellness, whether that's an emotional type of wellness, whether that's a spiritual type of wellness, always, and this is tying into my desire for us to empower ourselves. Empower yourself in all ways that you can. have on hand what herbs you need to heal your body. Have a space that you go for your healing. You know, have a plan in place to take care of yourself when you're not feeling well and maybe not thinking well. All of these things are empowering. Write down what makes you stressed, right? And this stress list that we're on now. Take note of what things, you know, stress you out. Write down ideas of how to express that. You know, if you need to confront someone directly, write out maybe how you'll share that with them. You know, come up with a plan of how to avoid that stress. But all of these things are empowering, and always, always take back your power. And yeah, we're constantly dealing. We're constantly dealing with racism. We're constantly dealing with racism, and xenophobia. So yes, it's always a right time to address stress. And that ties into me saying that we will always experience stress. It's just a matter of being prepared to address it. Okay, I think I got everyone's comments and questions, or we've addressed them. Okay, so yes. So lastly, like I have here, and like I mentioned, this stress symptom checklist. If you'll scroll down a little more, so basically there are categories. Evaluate your situation to determine, okay, am I stressed emotionally? Am I stressed mentally? Am I stressed physically, spiritually, financially? In whatever area is you are stressed, evaluate that for yourself so that you can adequately address those things. And again, make a plan as to how to address those, how to reduce those stressors, how to avoid those things. Some things we cannot. So for that we can control, great, let's do that. Let's create a plan, address it head on. For those that we can't change, such as people's behavior, their actions, and just who they are, then we, employ things that we can do to improve our response or to soften the impact that has on us. So we're going to take our flower remedies. We're going to do our calming herbs. And, we're going to do our deep breathing. We're going to get our massage, or we're going to do our self massage or our self reflexology. So all of these things we could do to help ourselves get over and heal and adjust from our daily stress and anxiety. Okay. The organizing class is right after this. I don't know if that's what you're, oh no, this might be a different question. Self-paced, where we're not sitting in the classes. Crystal, you mean? Yeah, so award, I don't know if you or Yvonne address that. Is there another self-paced online class that is being discussed? So maybe you can answer Crystal's question.
All right, no, we don't have any self-paced training online course readily available at the moment. Only have the Pan-African history class and the OK class.
So I don't know if that was mentioned at some point or if that's just a misunderstanding. I'm not aware of it, but definitely in a couple of minutes, Dr. Wright will be on, and she specializes in the Pan-African history and organizing. So I don't know if that's what you're looking for or what you're asking about, but she's up in just about a minute. And so maybe that she can address that if that's what you're asking. But next week we will talk about, and I think you can probably stop sharing the screen for me, or it will be fine, thank you. So next week we'll talk about detox and cleansing. We'll talk about all of the different organs in the body that are responsible for our cleansing. And we'll talk about juicing and all the good things that go along with that. So hopefully you'll join us. Again, just email me. I'll send out the packets. I'll usually, when I do that, I'll send out all 4 weeks worth of the packets so that you won't have to get them again. And pretty much we rotate. Usually I'll try to add some differences, focusing more on So this week, for example, I didn't focus as much on crystals, for example, but the next cycle we may. So it sort of repeats itself in 4-week intervals. So I'll send you all of the lessons. So feel free to email me requesting that. So thanks for joining me, and stay on for Dr. Wright. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and I bid you good health and peace.
Peace and love. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it for a wonderful lecture. On next, we're going to hear Dr. Tyreen Wright, leading us in the Pan-African organizing class. Yes, Dr. Tyreen Wright, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Okay. And I'm going to turn my camera on momentarily. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Pan-African History and Organizing class. You'll see me in 1 second. And I hope you all had a good week and were able to get the reading done as it pertained to the 2 evidentiary chapters for our work. I want to come a little closer. Okay, so we will be dealing with the chapters that you were going to read, which was the Liberian crime and exclusion measure. Let me see if you can see me. Hold on. Okay. I think hold on. 1 second for the visuals. But anyway, okay. I thought I cut myself off. I'm sorry. The readings for this past week were from the 2 cases, or were from the 2 cases, the African exclusion measure and the Liberian crisis. We'll briefly discuss those, and then we'll be moving on to discuss the rest of, okay, sorry guys, I'm just trying to get my camera straight because I moved around while I was waiting to start. And I do want to see you all, and hopefully you guys can see me. Okay. All righty, I think that's it. Let's see. Okay. There we go. All right. Okay, so the readings were related to the 2 chapters. Well, not related, they were the 2 evidentiary chapters. I'm drinking my berry juice, like Nana Akua would say. I'm drinking blueberries and cherries. But anyway, so the 2 chapters that you all were given were the evidentiary chapters for the African exclusion measure. And those are, and the Liberian crisis, those are examples of what Pan-Africanism could be in practice, right? In the realm of policy and in the realm of legislation. Okay, so I want to get into those a little bit, but then we're going to get right back to the curriculum and talk about Du Bois' other proponents, specific proponents of Pan-Africanism, and Nkrumah, his philosophy, Du Bois, Garvey, and others. And we're going to end, I think we're in our 3rd week here. Next week, we'll be watching a film, and we will be talking about the proponents of Pan-Africanism on the African continent, which I basically argue is the highest point or highest expression of Pan-Africanism, in the sense that it is a push not just for us to have function as individuals and work to participate in an effort to alleviate our condition. It's not just an organizational body seeking to come together to move in unison in order to advance the interests of African people and alleviate the condition, but it the concept of nationhood and continental unity, which ultimately is the highest expression that human beings can have in talking about unity, right? So if a nation is unified, this means this nation moves together in unison, right? Very little contradiction. Organizations can move in unison. Individuals can be unconflicted and move with other individuals. However, for a nation to say, we want continental unity, and this continental unity for us is Pan-Africanist in nature, is very likely the highest expression that we have ever seen. So we'll talk a little bit, that's where we're just giving you a little foreshadowing. That's where we're going to end towards the last week of the class next. So I'll be putting stuff into its group. So first off, let me just, I'm gonna come off of documents up and then go to some other things, because I know people are watching from outside of our group. So I just want to be able to share with them what we're doing as well. Okay, so first up, what we'll just do is just recap the specifics at the end. Then next, I will briefly get into the specifics of the African exclusion measure. I just introduced them last week, so we didn't go deep into it. And then I will be moving on to what I mentioned just now, which is talking about Du Bois, talking about Washington, and the conversation with Du Bois will lead to a discussion about organizational bodies that have supported Pan-Africanism. Okay, hold on, I want to make sure I don't close the wrong window and cut you all off. All right, bear with me. Actually, when I'm in this text, you can write it in the chat, and then I can actually see some of what you might be thinking, as you should have read. You should have read the Liberian crisis and African exclusion measure at this point. Okay, so I'm about to share my screen. Can I have permission to share my screen? Hello? Can I have permission to share my screen? Okay, let me see. This is more. Okay. Sorry, guys, I'm coughing on you. Okay. Screen. Start. Okay, and like I said, this is just it's a recap. Hold on. Uh-oh, I closed it. Did I close it? Okay, sorry, guys. I don't know what happened. All right, let me come back. Stop share. One second, I'm gonna get it right. All right, here, let me do that. One second, folks, sorry. The technical stuff. Okay, here we go. Come on. All right, here we go. Okay, screen. All right. So I'm about to share my screen once again. And I'm doing this. Yeah, there we go. So African exclusion measure, well, no, the Liberian crisis, African exclusion measure is second. For those of you who are not officially in the course, then you should be able to see it here if you have not been able to see it. And bottom line is this case is one of the evidentiary cases. You should have read it in its entirety. This is what was distributed at the end of the session last week. I'm just gonna go to the conclusion and hit the high points so that people can understand some of what was done and why this would be considered an example of Pan-Africanism, okay? Chapter starts out with Booker T. Washington, a quote from him that says, "No one, not even the citizens of Liberia, is more interested in the progress and success of the Republic than I am." So just a little blip to open up the chapter. This is from his personal papers, saying he's deeply invested in the fate of Liberia and the outcomes. So the details of the case, I'm sure you all read. I'm just gonna jump to the conclusion of it. Now, just to highlight a couple of things. No one is saying that this was not a case, the best case scenario. We're saying, if you read the material, Liberia was in jeopardy of being annexed as a nation, being taken and colonized as a nation. Where the individual Booker T. Washington, and we could actually, it doesn't have to be Booker T. Washington, it could be any person. But in this case, that individual who is contacted is aware of the situation. At the time, Liberia is only one of two African nations that are independent and uncolonized on the African continent. True enough, Liberia also has some issues with its founding, if you read it. It is established by a racist organization called the American Colonization Society. That being said, it was out of a Pan-African ideal and really dreamed to return to the African continent by African people in America who have survived the institution of slavery, that it really begins to come into fruition as the nation that it was intended to be. This is not to negate the indigenous population there, because as you know, if you read the entire case, I and Booker T. Washington, in light of this case, harshly criticized African people from America who returned to the African continent, settle, and then begin to manage the population and create systems and policies to keep them marginalized. This is very sharply criticized by myself as well as Booker T. Washington in real time when this happens. That being said, the French, the British, the German colonial forces, and more the first two, have their designs set on Liberia as a nation. Their desire is to completely colonize Africa in general. And Liberia is Ethiopia, only independent African nations on the continent of Africa. Everywhere else is either under the sphere of influence of an imperialist or European nation and or actually colonized by a European nation. So the preservation of Liberia is essential to African independence in general. That being said, Washington is involved, and as you guys could see, it's a long protracted case. Washington's involved in the preservation of Liberia so that it can live to fight another day. I don't want to get all into the details because you should have read it already. The picture on the in the back of the chapter is of the Librarian Commission to the United States, which Washington initiates this travel or this delegation from the US to bring the delegates from Liberia to the US to state their case for support. He basically protects negotiations all the way through, and then you know that they fall through if you read the whole case. Ultimately, him re-establishing it, and then without the legislative bodies in this country, establish a deal to protect the survival of Liberia. Now, there are a lot of negatives to it. One, the United States would get to put a military base in Liberia. Two, the United States, which had not in this case figured out how to exploit Liberia, which is why they are not in the fight to take the territory, meaning European nations want Liberia. The United States is not stating any claims to Liberia. The reason why the United States is not stating any claims to Liberia is because, one, to do so would force economic commitments. Two, they're primarily concerned with colonizing and controlling territories in the Americas, specifically Central America and South America and Latin America. But three, they have not also figured out how to exploit Liberia. The United States is generally unaware of the level of rubber that Liberia has at the beginning of this case, 1907, 1908. So they have no interest. This was a place where they could get rid of their African population who had survived enslavement. They sit off the coast in the form of the Navy, putting down conflicts between these two groups. However, no commitment to Liberia and no desire to commit because they are not clear on how to extend. Yes, the United States only gets involved in situations that they can exploit. When they say they're telling you they're in some humanitarian efforts, don't believe it. Don't believe it. Okay, they're in a part of the world because they have economic interest in the region. That's the only reason the United States gets involved in any so-called foreign affairs or conflicts, economic interests. And so in this instance, they're unclear. But by the time the end of this case comes about, 5 years later, they have figured out that there's rubber in the country, and part of these negotiations leads to establishing Firestone in the country. Not the best deal, but the only deal that could stick, and it was forced by Booker T. Washington. If you read the details, if you read the case, then you know the details, right? None other than him is able to keep Liberia on the agenda, force the negotiations right down to bringing the Librarian Commission to the United States and to the White House for secret meetings. This is a guy who was born into enslavement. What is Pan-Africanist about it is the fact that he could or could not have done this, and it would not have changed the outcomes for him in America. But he is interested in unifying with Liberians to preserve Liberia's exploited or erased in this instance, right? Now, this is not absolute, meaning that it is still going to be exploited. If you read the details of the case in Washington's recommendations, he speaks to Liberian officials about how not to be exploited. He talks about consumption. And he tells Liberian officials that every time, and this is not the exact words, these are my paraphrased words. He tells them that every time you open a can in Liberia that you have imported into the country from foreign, from another country, you seal the fate of Liberians in poverty. In other words, he's saying, stop consuming Western goods. Produce your own food. This is your nation. That's what nations do. That's the power of having a nation, that you can produce for yourself. So in his recommendations, you see what he suggests should be the path. Number one being that African people in America who have resettled in Liberia and returned to the African continent after slavery, and native Liberians, this conflict between the two groups that is rooted in the resettlement of so-called Americo-Liberians has to be resolved. If it is not resolved, right? And this speaks to unity. If our ethnic, because this is ultimately what it is, if our ethnic differences aren't resolved, then it could destroy us. Unity protects us. To be divided destroys us. And so he's very clear that this will be the destruction of the nation. And if you know the history of Liberia, or you're from Liberia, then you know that many of the wars are rooted in this period of history, and has something to do with the resettlement of the Americo-Liberian population, which would have a monopoly on the political landscape in the country from before the Taylors and beyond. Okay, most of the presidents in Liberia have been Americo-Liberian. And we know that there has been ethnic issues in the country for the last century as a result of resettlement. And so Washington is very aware of that. And this is why you see the recommendations that he has. If you don't know where the recommendations are, let me just show you Washington's recommendations, right? Okay. So this is what I'm talking about right here. He says, he says, the whole future of Liberia hinges upon its ability to get a hold of the native population for the tribal Liberian. Get hold of the native population for the tribal Liberian has very real grievances against the minority of Americo-Liberians, descendants of deported American slaves who ran the government and controlled the economy. So he's saying that you have to get a hold of the indigenous population as they have legitimate grievances. You can't ignore the legitimate grievances that they have in light of the resettlement of African people from the United States. And I would love to spend more time on that, just, you know, in general, because that right there, although it's Americo-Liberian and indigenous Liberian, it speaks to ethnic conflict as we have. And I will talk about that next week because I'm going to address Amilcar Cabral. And Amilcar Cabral addresses, you know, how we can forge unity as a result of engaging in struggle, okay? So I'm just gonna read the conclusions really briefly and take it from there, okay? In many ways, the findings of this case highlight the uphill battle to Washington fought. Washington used the crisis of 1907 to get the attention of the U.S. political officials who, after years of American indifference, allowed Liberia to secure a much needed loan that ended the immediate threat of encroachment. Had it not been for Washington's public involvement as well as his close personal relationship with President Roosevelt, the US may not have assisted Liberia at all. Like the case that follows, there is a moment where Washington had to make a decision regarding common interests. Washington's response to the request for help would, hold on 1 second. I'm sorry, guys. Washington's response for the request for help could have been met with a resounding no. However, not only did he agree to the existence of Liberia, but he identified with both the Americo-Liberian population as well as the native Liberian populations. And why I say populations, because I mean the many ethnic groups that are there, right? Had he decided against aggressively negotiating on behalf of Liberia, the outcome would have been very different. Washington's presence and activity in this particular case was the only unique variable in the Liberian crisis of 1908-1909. Officials and presidents had previously intervened in Liberia, but when the US was asked to act officially, legislators have historically refused to make any significant commitment to the country. Okay. In other words, when asked to support Liberia, you know, like how people are being asked to support European nations, like right now, that are in conflict with each other, you know, a blind eye was turned to Liberia. So he is the rogue factor in this case. Was neither a US nor Liberian official. Washington, he was neither a US or Liberian official. All parties involved acknowledged that he was a key negotiator and advisor and wielded considerable influence and power in the US and internationally. Through his ongoing rapport with Roosevelt and later Taft, he was able to secure US commitments that had significant strategic value to Liberia and helped to maintain the country's stability. Washington directly influenced every aspect of the case: diplomacy, actual negotiations, advisement, fundraising, and recommendations. It is very likely that without his intervention, both French and British forces would have annexed Liberia on this particular occasion. However, conclusively, what should be highlighted here is that as soon as Liberia was secure, Washington attempted to transport his philosophy of self-help. His recommendations were based on the Tuskegee model: to own and operate industry and to eliminate dependency. The interpretive aspects of the case highlight that the historical relationship between the US and Liberia was traditionally undefined. The US as a stakeholder in the case viewed Liberia as an informal territory. The British and French, who had strategically desired to annex Liberia, viewed the new nation as an uncolonized territory in Africa. If gone unclaimed, would be absorbed by both colonial powers. Americo-Liberians, to a large degree, viewed the nation as a colony of the US through this relationship, was rejected, repeatedly called into question. Hold on 1 second. Americo-Liberians, to a large degree, viewed the nation as a colony of the US, although this relationship was repeatedly called into question. In addition, as a key stakeholder, due to his role in the negotiations and spokesperson, Washington viewed Liberia as one of the only two free African nations on the continent of Africa. Okay. So I think that's the end of it there, right? This is the image of the Liberian Commission in Tuskegee. So it's sort of a money shot to show like it really happened beyond the documentation. It actually really happened. Okay. And the Liberian Commission comes all the way from Liberia, comes to DC, Washington hopes, well, he meets them in DC, brings them to Tuskegee. There's about 6-7 days where they are there in a lot of pomp and circumstance. And why? Because Theodore Roosevelt said, hey, we're not laying the red carpet out for Liberia for any particular reason. They're in bad shape. Washington is not trying to hear that. He's like, listen, we've never had a delegation like this before. And what he's saying is that these are my people, right? Yes, they are coming in need of help. But these are African people who escaped enslavement. And these are African people with one of only 2 independent African nations on the continent of Africa. And so as much as the US white American politicians try to downplay Liberia, he doesn't. He holds them up, brings them to Tuskegee, and this image is the image of them in the garden. These 3 men right here that I'm going to put in the frame, right? These 3 men right here sitting down are vice president, former president, and another Liberian official. I'm not looking at the caption, but let's see, what does it say? Seated. Well, yes, seated. Charles B. Dunbar, G.H. Gibson, former president of Librarian, J.J. Dodson, former vice president of Liberia. Okay, and everyone else around are, Washington and related officials here on this end, okay, who facilitate some of this. But this is in the garden at Tuskegee. And then he takes them back to Washington, D.C., and he facilitates a secret meeting between the officials, well, between 3 specific people and this commission that you see. One of them being Roosevelt, President Roosevelt at that time, the incumbent, President-elect Taft, because this is in between elections. President President-elect Taft, and Elihu Root, which is the Secretary of State at the time. And why does Washington do this? Because he doesn't trust them. He believes that the change of administration in the United States will thwart the negotiations that he puts in place to secure Liberia. And so he will see, if you read the case, you will see that he tells both Theodore Roosevelt and, Theodore Roosevelt's, predecessor, that whatever you do or fail to do to help Liberia, it will be remembered by 4 million Negroes at voting time. Now, that's not a man, I'm not going to really get into the whole US dynamic, but that's not a man who doesn't believe in the vote. He's leveraging the vote of Black people in an effort to get support for Liberia. Let me say that again. He is leveraging the Black vote in America against the President of the United States in an effort to force them to support Liberia in the way that he sees fit, and will allow Liberia to survive other European groups, imperialist groups, right? Or nations, let's say nations, the French and the British, who have sworn to annex the territory, are salivating to take it. So that's sort of the money shot there. Now, I'm going to just briefly recap the details for the African exclusion measure. And then what I'm going to do, so to make things simple, I'm going to share the film that we will be watching. That's going to be sort of like your visual reading. And then I'll be sharing the documents. And the film that I'll be sharing is called Cuban African Odyssey. It talks about all the liberation struggles on the African continent. And the push for a continental unity, Pan-African unity on the continent of Africa. So real quick, let me come back so that you can see me for 2 seconds. Well, I don't know. Yeah, stop share. Okay, so I'm back real quick. So that's the Liberian crisis case. Let me just see what you guys have to say just a little bit. I can't see the time. So can you tell me, give me a time check, Yvonne? Or whoever is here.
Yes. We still have 26 minutes.
Okay, could you tell me the actual time?
It's 12:20.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you. Um, Crystal, you have to, I don't know if you're registered in the course, you can ask for them to share the information about where you could see the rest. I think you can see it on Facebook page. But it depends on if you're like in the course, you're not in the course, or whatever the case may be. All right, so let me, oh, I'm frozen now. Okay, no problem. Let me take this off of here, and then I'm going to be sharing the other case, okay? So then the other case that you should have read was the African exclusion measure, and we're just going to recap that just briefly. Much shorter case, as I told you before when I gave it to you. Much shorter case, more to the point, and it basically is Booker T. Washington challenging the United States and U.S. legislation regarding African people in the United States. Because the U.S. has proposed a measure to exclude anyone of the Black or African race from the United States from 1915 on. Right? So this particular case is called the African exclusion measure. Very short case. I'm going to share my screen again. Very short case. Okay, you got to give me permission again, Yvonne. It says only the host can do that.
Yes, you are allowed.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So, very short case. I read the first part of the case with you guys last week. So I'm just going to recap the conclusions and give you some thoughts and insight on it. And delve a little bit into the conclusions. Okay. So the case of the African exclusion measure contrasts the Liberian crisis due to the brief timeline and Washington's very direct opposition to U.S. immigration policies. His efforts in the case exemplifies his natural inclination to address issues facing African people abroad as well as within the U.S. There were no conflicting loyalties in this particular case. Washington took to the press and the people publicly condemning the bill as unjust and wrongfully aimed at African people from the Caribbean, Central, and South America, but an overt affront to the masses of African Americans within the US as well. He worked behind the scenes as well, directly attempting to persuade and challenge those expected to vote on the bill. Washington's ability to influence and affect the outcome of the case is in an exceptionally short amount of time was what was telling. Several African-American leaders from the US publicly opposed the measure. However, Washington wielded a level of unconstituted power that facilitated the bill's repeal through a vigorous and well-organized campaign. The case conclusively recounted Washington's effort to curtail discriminatory and racist policies directed at African people internationally. Although the amendment specified any one of the African or Black race, the targeted populations were African people from the Caribbean, Central and South America, who largely identified by nationality: Jamaican, Costa Rican, Panamanian, Trinidadian, etc. However, this did not confuse Washington, who to a large degree understood the scattering of African peoples abroad due to enslavement. Regardless of the various identities and nationalities, the targeted population assumed Washington's Pan-African consciousness and understanding of their historical context allowed him to act on their behalf. He accurately identified the targeted populations as African people and opposed the measure. International students and faculty, which were aware of the amendment and its defeat, wrote Booker T. Washington and thanked him for his efforts. Few doubted that Washington's moral suasion and direct pressure brought upon the Congress through his lieutenants fostered the defeat of the amendment. Okay, so he basically pressured them. If you read the details of the case, you see how they hold up the Congress. They forced the polling. His secret network called the Tuskegee Machine is there. They could go and lobby directly and pressure legislators to vote favorably against the measure. And they did so. It did work. Washington makes it plain in the end, like, had that not worked, I would have, went to racist Woodrow Wilson and addressed him. But you saw in the details of the case, he says to his lieutenants in the Tuskegee Machine, go to Washington, D.C. and pull every string possible to defeat this unfair measure. Okay. So he's not willing to take a no, And one thing, let me just step outside of the details of this case. One thing I want to say about us, we, in our history, with the exception of people who fought radical, and I'm talking specifically in the United States, with our history, there are very few people, with exception of the insurrections, who have been ruthless for us. We see other people be ruthless in their situations and ruthless against us. And sometimes we're ruthless for our own individual interests, but it's very seldom that we see individuals in our history who were ruthless for our collective good. When I talk about that, I mean, the only people I really think of like that are folks like Harriet Tubman, who are ruthless for our own interests, collective interests, right? It was another lady that I was watching her biography just recently who also liberated many African people. But we generally don't know about people being ruthless for us. We tend to be so thankful to be in certain spaces that we color within the lines. Okay, Washington, whatever his shortcomings were or weren't, he was ruthless for African people, Black people. And this case is not for African people in the United States. This is to advance the interests of African people outside of the United States, who he knew would come to the United States and benefit from it and wanted them to. If that's not Pan-Africanist, I don't know what is. One of the things he wants to maintain is that there is a steady flow of students from the African continent since 1893 to Tuskegee. He wants to maintain that. He wants African people from the Caribbean, Central and South America, even though they don't call themselves African, and sometimes are just beginning to call themselves Black. He still wanted them to be able to come to Tuskegee and study and take the best practices back to their respective locales. So he didn't want to lose that connection with the larger African world. Okay. And so this is what he does. This is once again not a case that benefits so-called African Americans within the United States. This is a case that benefits African people globally. Okay. And as we know the United States even today does not care about Black people immigrating into the United States. But I bet you right now, Ukraine, what did they say? They're going to take 100,000 Ukrainian refugees at some point. But you just saw how they treated African people out of Haiti, right? Who have suffered so much natural and political disaster. Okay, so Washington is seeking to protect the right of African people to move about the world freely and have access to resources. And he does not, had he had to be educated in 1 week, some of y'all can take, no offense, but some folks can take a course like this and have to have a whole lifetime before they identify with African people globally. He had already been educated through experience and relationships with African people in the Caribbean, Central, South America, and on the continent of Africa, more importantly, about who we were and who we are. So when the United States say anybody of the Black or African race, he's like, those are my folks. We're not allowing this. This case is a model of how to challenge the governments under which you live on behalf of African people. This case is a model of how to organize and the pressure points in that society, how to press the pressure points in the society and under the government you live in order to protect African people and Black people from the racist legislation your government may initiate. Okay. And so, right. So, you know, this is a model of sorts on how to do that. Washington could have said, hey, I'm in America, the hell with everybody else. But that was far from his attitude. And he didn't need a crash course on who's African and who's not, who's Black and who's not, to know that he automatically was obligated to oppose this measure. Okay, so it was during his fight against the African exclusion measure that Booker T. Washington challenged U.S. political representatives in defense of African people abroad for the first time. In the previous case, the Liberian crisis, Washington was responsible for the private negotiations and in keeping Liberian on the agenda in political circles. Here, he openly and vocally challenged the adoption of language that emerged in the immigration bill. The language of the bill would change how U.S. policies regulated or eliminated the immigration of African persons into the U.S. And I should have put forever. Okay, not long after this case, later that year, Booker T. Washington dies. So this case takes place in January of 1915, and he dies in November of 1914. You know, great case. Great case, significant. I mean, there's a lot of controversy once again about like this particular book and this case, who most people are trying to put it on the map because it's certainly an example of Pan-Africanism. And I'm trying to essentially put the case on the map, and the case has been put on the map, but I'm trying to continue to keep it on the map because of the simple fact that we should know how to advocate for each other in our respective locales. I know my mouth is turned purple. In our respective locales, we should know how to advocate for each other, right? Any questions about this particular case? Okay, great, Crystal. Yeah, I don't know how they're doing this whole thing. Okay. All right, so I don't see any questions. So the next thing that we're going to be doing, I'm going to be sharing a film called The Journey of Man, a Genetic Odyssey. And this film is basically a film about African independence. It will open up the conversation both, because I think we only have one more week or two, but it will open up the, hi Denise, it will open up a conversation about African independence, specific proponents of Pan-Africanism and continental unity on the African continent. This is very important. And as I started out with saying, this is the highest expression of Pan-Africanism on the continent of Africa. I'll also address, and this film addresses people like Amilcar Cabral, who understands that we can't take a staunch Marxist-Leninist line, that we have to essentially understand that for African people, culture and history are tools of liberation, and we have to invoke those things. So I'm going to post that actually right now in the group, and it's called Cuban African Odyssey. And much like in the same way that we used Booker T. Washington and Africa, the book, let's not fixate on, Cuba. What we want to focus on is how African people liberate themselves, right? In this context of colonialism. It's something that people don't talk about enough. And part of the propelling energy and sentiment and ideology from the beginning, as per Kwame Nkrumah, is that Ghana in particular, which is liberated first, Ghana can't be the only one, right? It has to be continental liberation. It has to be continental unity, And so this film addressed all of that. And it's just through the lens of Cuba, who really, you have to say that Cuba's role in Africa is certainly Pan-Africanist in nature. And so, this is why this film is actually being used. Okay, so hold on one second. I want to cue it. Okay, yeah, perfect. It's the right one. I want to make sure it's the right film. Okay. Okay, so I might have shared it in one of the groups twice. All right, so I shared it in all of the groups, and I will start, well, I'll let you guys watch it first. So it's in all of the groups at the moment, and you should have seen it posted in there. And you will be able to view it. It's called Cuba, an African Odyssey. All right, okay, good. So I'm actually gonna end right here, like for the first time, minutes early. But yeah, let me see what you guys are saying. Exactly, Crystal, none of these governments give a damn and about African people anywhere, right? And so the difference is like, so what do we do for our people globally and internationally? So when I think about the scenario of the Haitian migrants at the border, seeking refuge after the political unrest and the earthquakes in Haiti. What should have happened when we saw that people on horses attacking them, chasing them down, we should have had an internal mechanism organized by African people here to put pressure on the US government and specific legislators and turn that situation around instead of having X number of people return to Haiti. Okay. Now, if it were in Washington's time, he was able in 1 week, you know, see, this is the thing, it's funny because Booker T. Washington, a lot of people get caught up with who they think he was, but we're not doing this now. We can't offer protection to any African group around the world as per leveraging our presence economically, politically, and otherwise within the United States. Because we don't got our mind right and we don't got ourselves organized in order to be powerful enough to do that. However, he did this 117 years ago and counting. Right? And we got criticism of him anyway. But so that being said, it gives us a model, right? We can go back to this and look at how he did it. Okay, so we need the same and similar mechanisms, right? Because you can send 80 to 200 African people from Haiti back, but you can tell the US citizens that they were getting ready to take in 100,000 Ukrainian people very soon. I'm sure they'll be living better than most of the Black people live here. Exactly, Denise. Oh, great. Oh, great. Chris Emmanuel, I thoroughly enjoyed reading this case. Okay. Yeah, the Liberian crisis is very long. And if you enjoyed the Liberian crisis, then you'll also enjoy the African exclusion measure, which is shorter, but it shows you the very definitive and conscious movements on the part of Washington to address this racist US policy. You're welcome, Clyde. MC user, I'm not sure who this is. Please kindly send the material. So we don't email. I know Nana Kuachi emails materials and stuff like that to people. I don't, but you need to be enrolled in the group. But enrolled in the group, I don't know. I think the next cycle is going to be a little bit different. We're going to be focusing more on getting people acclimated to using the tools that I Love Black People have. So all of this time we're building up to actionable measures, right? As participants and ambassadors or members of I Love Black People. So I think going forward, the next cycle, we'll do less of the ideological development and more of the actionable side of it. So I don't know how that's going to work, but I will communicate to with people, and I Love Black People, to find out how, if you're interested still. I mean, but you can just well, I don't promote the book as something you can buy, but if you're interested in the book, you can go to BookerTWashingtonInAfrica.com to get the book. I give the chapters out here for free. So I don't really talk about people where to buy the book, but if that's where if you're interested in it, but don't see yourself being able to join the group. Even though there's no reason why you should not join the group. It's just that I don't know that the curriculum will be. I have to have more conversations about whether or not I'll be doing any ideological development at all going forward. Okay, but we'll see. Okay. Let me see any other questions. So you all see where Cuban African Odyssey, and those of you who are not in the group, you can go on YouTube and watch Cuban African Odyssey. Okay. Yeah. It's there, parts 1 and 2. It's there in its entirety. It's a wonderful film. I use it in the classroom as well. Right. Right. Well, okay, so that's a perfect, thank you for your question, Chris Emmanuel. I'll tell you why. He didn't really want them to put their boots in the ground. He took military assistance from Castro in the form of strategic support and supplies. But so there's a concept that Amilcar Cabral was talking about during this time, which was that he recognized that the people of Guinea-Bissau, prior to colonialism, and for those of you who are on the African continent, this should speak to some of what I see are quick, consistent comments about this particular, about ethnic diversity and ethnic difference. So on the African continent, prior to colonialism, you had a multitude of ethnicities all over Africa. They're not, people are forced together and forced apart by the drawing of the colonial lines. That being said, the people of Guinea-Bissau, prior to colonialism, would not have seen themselves as the same people. They probably could be more closely ethnically related to people outside of Guinea-Bissau, but in the region, than they are to people who would be in Guinea-Bissau at the time that this war is initiated. And that is because the European had no respect for the ethnic diversity and the already constituted communities that existed amongst Africans on the continent when they cut the colonial borders, okay? That being said, this would be the first time the people of Guinea-Bissau would be charged with being unified as a people. Sure, they suffered under colonialism, but now this was a time for them to come together, be it ethnically different and diverse, and work in the effort that was beneficial to them all. Sound a lot like Pan-Africanism, right? Unity of African people for the purpose of eradicating oppression and exploitation. Unity of African people for the purpose of eradicating oppression and exploitation, right? It is the first time they would have to engage in Pan-Africanism. And so he knew that this process of engaging in Pan-Africanism, this process of forging unity would usher them into their new nationhood. He had a phrase for it. He said the unity will prepare, the struggle will prepare the people for the victory, right? The victory of becoming their own nation as a result of this collective struggle against the common colonial oppressive force and imperialist force. I hope I'm being clear, but I think that's as clear as I can make it. And so it was important. It was a bonding exercise. It is a bonding ritual to struggle and fight together against a common oppressor, opposer, and colonial force, right? So that is part of where Amilcar Cabral is coming from, okay? And it worked for the most part. They are able to forge themselves as somewhat of a new people who, yes, have ethnic diversity still, but now have national unity, right? Because they would forge a new nation as a result of throwing off the cloak of colonialism. So, and that's so he is the facilitator of that process in essence, right? Okay, folks, thank you so much. Yes, Denise. I see you. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Right. The United States Texas are talking about they're gonna, give asylum 100,000 people or whatever the number was, I wanna be tax exempt. Please let me keep my tax money. I don't want my tax money going to any of that. You're welcome. Thank you. It just says MC user. I don't see your name, but you're very welcome. I look forward to us having even more of that conversation. This is one of my favorite parts of the course when everyone watches this film. And then I'll be posting some supporting documents as well later today. Okay. All right, folks. Thank you so much for your time. Let me see if you can see me one more time. Thank you so much for your time. And I will see you all next week. And enjoy the film and the reading that's going to accompany it. Okay. All righty. You're welcome. Bye, Denise. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye. All right. I am because we are. Thank you.